Hey guys, welcome to Timeless Mysteries Live Edition. So today I'm actually using um, the YouTube live app. I don't know what's wrong with StreamYard, but it's not working. So I see Molly and Callie and Olga are here. How are you guys today? Hey Lauren, hey Maribel. I'm glad you guys were able to make it. So I've been working on this for a while. And I don't really know how it's going to go. Um, I've got basically five stories that I want to tell, and I was actually looking at one of them this morning, and I spent all day rewriting it. So I hope the other ones aren't as bad. But I do have one um, that I think is gonna, maybe give uh, put out a new conspiracy, basically. Um, but um, yeah. So how's everyone's 3-day weekend? Are y'all getting a 3-day weekend? Well, I don't have to go to work tomorrow, so I'm pretty happy. I actually slept almost all day yesterday, and I needed that. I've been like running on fumes for months now, it seems like. Yeah, federal holidays. I get those holidays off too, and some state ones. All right, so I'm just gonna give it a couple more minutes, see if anybody else shows up. I've got this big, long thing that I'm gonna be reading from, um, and I don't know any other way that I could do this without just reading it. So I'm gonna do my best to remember where the camera is and try to remember that there's a chat over here. But for the most part, once I start, um, I'm gonna be just reading through it because if I stop it, it'll just kind of ruin the momentum. And then after I get to a breaking point, then I'll like talk with you guys, see what you guys think before I move on to the next one. Um, and hopefully I could get this done in an hour or two. So if not, we may actually have to finish it up tomorrow. Um, but the last story I think is going to be the most the one you guys are gonna like the most, just because it's a little more far-fetched, and I don't think people have talked about it yet. So, I'm just looking through the chat. Molly says, "Me too, sleeping late around all day." Sometimes it feels great to do that. A lot of times when I do that, I feel like, man, there's just always something else I gotta be doing. Like, I'm just wasting my time. The same thing happens when I try to watch TV. I'll be watching for 5 or 10 minutes and then like something pops in my head and I'm like, "Oh man, I need to check that out." Then I'm, googling stuff and then I'm looking at the stuff I've already written and thinking, "Oh man, I just messed all that up. I got to do this all over again." And that's basically how things work for me. I'm just always kind of trying to get stuff finished and I never get them done. Here in Anchorage today, it's only like 53 degrees outside and it's raining. And it kind of sucks actually. Yesterday, it was like the day that I slept. I'm telling you, it was perfect. The sky was perfectly blue. All the green, the trees, the grass, everything was like bright, sparkling, and I slept. And it's like the day I'm like up early and I'm feeling good and I can actually go out, maybe go for a hike or something, and it's raining and cold, you know. But anyways, guys, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So hey Maria, thanks for joining. Lauren says, yes, everyone is welcome. And I am so jealous. The South is literally hell, hot and humid. Hmm. Oh, Lauren made spaghetti. Man, I want some spaghetti. Do you make your own sauce or do you just use like ragu like I do? All right, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Just remember to kind of click the heart and smiley faces and stuff, the emojis, as I'm going through this. And just keep in mind that I probably won't be looking at the chat until I get through one of the sections. Um, it'll just be easier for me that way because there's like 20,000 words here that I'm going to try to get through in like 2 hours. Thank you, guys. I see the hearts here, flying. That's pretty cool. Um, so today we're talking about the 111-minute phone call. Um, I'm titling this um, "A Night Before Darkness." Um, yeah. So late on a warm August night in 2018, a 2-hour phone call unfolded that would later become the dark heart of countless theories. For exactly 111 minutes, Chris Watts and Nichol Kessinger were connected by an invisible thread. That call began at 9:28 p.m. on Sunday, August 12th. It didn't end until 11:19 p.m. Around that time, Shanann was supposed to be returning home, and she would have had her flight not been delayed. In retrospect, those 111 minutes are a black hole in the story of the Watts family murders. An abyss where an abyss that has pulled in every question, every fear, and every fantasy from those who seek to understand the ultimate question here. Why? What was said or whispered in that twilight phone call mere hours before a pregnant mother and two little girls were slain? Did they argue? Did they whisper promises of love? Did they plot the unthinkable? The truth remains sealed in two minds, one now behind bars and the other vanished from public view. In the absence of answers, imagination has filled the void with darkness. Nichol Kessinger, once simply the secret lover in Chris's double life, has become a figure of relentless public obsession. In the court of public opinion, she is the enigmatic shadow behind the crime, the other woman onto whom the world of suspicion has been set. People scour every known detail of her involvement, searching for cracks that might reveal complicity. They note how, before ever speaking to the police, Kessinger deleted Watts's contact info, along with all of their texts and call logs. They point to her unsettling Google searches, things like, "Do people hate Amber Frey?" A reference to the infamous mistress of another family killer, as if Nichol foresaw how the world might soon regard her. They recall her researching news of Shanann's disappearance in real time and then wiping those searches from her history, even Googling, "Can cops trace text messages?" To the throngs of online sleuths and true crime fanatics, such details are damning clues. In their eyes, It's inconceivable that so lengthy a call on the eve of murder could be innocent. It must have been during those 111 minutes that the die was cast. Even after Chris Watts confessed and pleaded guilty, accepting sole responsibility for annihilating his family, a segment of the public refuses to see him as the lone monster. Instead, they petition authorities to re examine Nichol Kessinger, convinced that justice has yet to be served. Thousands of people have added their names to various online petitions, begging that the case be reopened to probe her for any potential involvement once and for all. It's an astonishing reaction, given that the man who committed the crimes actually confessed. As one observer noted, it almost feels as if these individuals want Kessinger to pay for the sin of adultery by recasting her as a murderess. After all, Chris was the picture of an attentive husband and father on the surface. Perhaps some find it easier to believe that a temptress led him astray than to accept that he alone could unleash such cruelty. In Nichol, they have found a convenient repository for their anger and unanswered questions. She has been shamed as one of the most hated women in America, to the point that after the murders, she moved away, started a new life under a new name. There's even the possibility that she entered some sort of witness protection to escape the public venom. And yet, the whispers follow her more closely than her own shadow. Why is this obsession with implicating the mistress? Perhaps it's easier for us as spectators of horror to believe that such an unfathomable act, a man killing his pregnant wife and two young daughters, could only happen with the devil on his shoulders. Perhaps we crave a broader narrative of conspiracy and seduction, a story in which the mild mannered family man was ensnared by a femme fatale or goaded into this madness by a co-conspirator, rather than accept a far more unsettling idea. Chris Watts needed no help. He committed the ultimate betrayal on his own. In Nichol Kessinger, the public has found a focal point for a modern witch hunt. She lied about knowing Chris was married. She had an affair with a man with everything to lose. So surely, they argued, and she must have known what was about to happen. Or did she push him to do these heinous acts? Or is it even possible that maybe she helped carry them out? These theories are born as much from cultural archetypes as they are from facts. The Jezebel, the home wrecker, the woman who wields influence as deadly as the sharpest blade. This narrative provides a grim sort of comfort. If she was involved, then the world makes a little more sense, and the evil that we're forced to confront might seem a little less random. The known facts of their relationships offer both clarity and mystery. Chris was a practiced liar, adept at leading a double life. He could text his mistress sweetly and plan weekend getaways. Even his wife grew frantic about their crumbling marriage. Nicole, for her part, claims she was duped, that she believed Chris was separated, that she saw no warning signs of violence, and that when his family disappeared, she was going to do anything she could to help find them. And indeed, it was Nicole who approached the police on her own volition to confess the affair, revealing Chris's lies. But her credibility was undermined by her own actions. Those scrambled efforts to erase her digital footprint, the half truths and omissions in early interviews, the way she seemed to be managing her image in the midst of an unthinkable tragedy. Was she merely trying to distance herself from infamy, or was she hiding something more? The dichotomy is tantalizing. In one light, she's a woman who fell in love with the wrong man and then recoiled in horror at what he'd done. In another, she's the dark catalyst of the story. She was manipulative, panicked, and self preserving as events began to come to light. Caught between these extremes, the 111-minute call has become a kind of Rorschach test for public theories. It is the last known extended interaction between Chris and Nicole before the murders. A phone call that ended just hours before Shanann Watts finally walked through her front door for the last time. Whatever transpired in that nearly 2 hour exchange has been the subject of endless conjecture. Because if any moment exists where Nichol Kessinger's words or silence could have altered the course of fate, this phone call was it. Did she spark Chris's rage that night, perhaps by issuing an ultimatum or expressing doubt? Did she soothe him with affection and cement his resolve to remove the obstacles in their new life? Did she actively encourage a murderous plan or unknowingly listen as he hinted at one? Or did she, in some unfathomable scenario, try to stop the upcoming horror? Welcome to Timeless Mysteries. Please like and subscribe and support my channel by becoming a member today. Today, we step into the fog of that Sunday night so many years ago and step back into the dawn of tragedy. I will be presenting multiple dramatized versions of what might have happened, distinct what ifs drawn from known facts. Then spun into fully realized scenes, each scenario a possible chapter in the Watts family story. Each story will have a different tone and trajectory for those fateful 111 minutes and its aftermath. Rage, passion, conspiracy, confession, and finally, a fifth scenario, a unique narrative that imagines something entirely unexpected. It's something you don't want to miss. These scenarios are speculative dramatizations, thought experiments rooted in the evidence. The speculation and assumptions began as whispers, and they are now a deafening roar. Is it possible that fiction and rumor can become fact, or was it always the truth? So go ahead, dim the lights, take a breath, and step with us into that uncertain darkness. The phone is ringing. Nichol Kessinger is about to pick up. On the other end of the line, Chris Watts stands in his quiet home husband and father on the precipice of damnation. The next 111 minutes will change everything. So, this first chapter, 111 minutes of anger. Hey guys, so I'm going to just take a break here for a second and look through the chat. Thank you, LK, for the super chat, and thank you, Maribel. I really appreciate that. I'm just kind of looking here. What do you guys think so far? Is this all something you've heard before? Gerald's 2 cents says 111-minute call, Googling their address and pinging the location that morning. Police can't be that incompetent. Yeah, I agree. It seems like they should have investigated her further. Hey, Victoria. Hey, Carrie B. Let's see who else didn't I know is here yet. Gerald's 2 cents. How's it going today? Everybody having a good holiday weekend? Yeah, I agree. It's hard to imagine that she's not involved. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and continue. A ceiling fan sliced lazy circles into the heavy air of Chris Watts's living room. He paced beneath it in the dim glow, phone pressed to his ear, jaw clenched so tight that each word felt chiseled from stone. On the line, Nicole's voice crackled with equal parts desperation and fury. What began as a tense check-in had spiraled quickly into a full-blown argument, an emotional tempest threatening to engulf them both. You lied to me again, Chris, Nicole hissed, her tone low but seething. You said it was over with her. You said you were done. In her apartment, miles away, Nichol Kessinger stood barefoot by an open window, one hand whirling the curtain cord as she struggled to keep her voice steady. Through the window, the ordinary world went on, distant traffic, a flicker of city lights, oblivious to the drama of this phone call. I know that you and Shanann are working things out. I saw her Facebook videos, Chris. Chris felt a tinge, like an electric shock, and instantly felt clammy. His heart began to pound in his chest. That's not true, Chris wanted to say, but the words were stuck behind a wall at the back of his throat. Chris, Nicole sobs. She was terrified to say these things out loud. She forced the words out without any regard for her own heartbreak. I know you guys are having another baby. Chris halted mid-stride, rage threatening to overrule his fear. He had hoped to avoid this confrontation. Chris began to consider numerous excuses, but nothing seemed right, and soon the silence seemed to acknowledge Nicole's accusations to be the facts that they were. In that crushing silence, Nicole's heart sank. The quiet on the line was confirmation enough, an unspoken admission of guilt. She closed her eyes, and for the moment, the only sound was her own unsteady breathing. The taste of betrayal was metallic on her tongue, bitter and nauseating. When she spoke again, her voice was broken, a whisper drifting through the phone's tiny speaker. Say something, Chris, she pleaded softly, each word quivering. At least have the decency to tell me the truth now. Across town, Chris swallowed hard. A bead of sweat traced a cold line down the side of his face. He rubbed it away with a trembling hand. The lamp in the corner flickered, as if an unseen draft had dared stir. Chris's chest felt tight, as though the darkness of the room had grown dense enough to crush his ribs. He opened his mouth, forcing the words out. Nichol, he began, his voice hoarse. It's not what you think. His own words sounded feeble, hollow. He cringed at how unconvincing they were to even to himself. On the other end, Nichol let out a sharp, humorless laugh that cracked midway, turning into a sob. Not what I think, she echoed bitterly. A gust of night air billowed. The sheer curtain beside her, brushing it against her bare leg. She barely noticed the chill. Chris, I'm not stupid. Do you really expect me to believe that there's some innocent explanation? Because right now, it looks like everything you ever told me was a lie. Chris flinched, shifting the phone from one ear to the other, as if outrunning her words. His pulse thudded in his ears. He grasped at the first excuse that came to mind. I was going to tell you, he blurted out. I didn't know how. I never meant for you to find out like this. Nichole's eyes stung with angry tears. She pressed her palm flat against the cool window pane, trying to ground herself. The city lights beyond smeared into a hazy glow through her tears. She remembered the video of Shanann beaming, phone in hand, proudly announcing her pregnancy to friends, to Chris. The memory pierced her like shards of glass. When exactly were you planning on telling me? She demanded, a tremor of rage sharpening her tone. Were you ever going to tell me at all? Or were you just hoping I'd never find out your wife is pregnant with your child? God, Chris, her voice wavered between fury and anguish. You looked so happy in that video. You kissed her. You held her like you, she choked on the words, unable to finish the thought. Chris squeezed his eyes shut. The picture, he could picture the very moment Nichol was describing. Shanann handing him a little pink onesie to announce the new baby. His forced smile captured on video for the entire world to see. At the time, he felt a flicker of joy at the idea of a son, quickly smothered by a suffocating dread that he couldn't yet name. Now that moment had come back like a ghost to torment him. That was, he started, then faltered. How could he explain it? He wasn't even sure it was true anymore. It was before everything with you and me. I didn't know how to handle it, Nick. I was confused. Nichole's breath caught at her nickname, Nick, uttered so tenderly in his deep voice. She remembered how the same voice murmured her in her ear in gentler times. How those arms that now ache held a phone that once wrapped around her on a warm summer night. The memory made her ache. But tonight, that warmth felt a million miles away. She steeled herself. Confused, she repeated, the bitterness returning. You weren't confused when you lied to my face. You looked me in the eyes and told me that you and Shanann were over, that you were sleeping in the basement, that the marriage was done. All lies, Chris. Lies on top of lies. Each accusation landed like a lash across Chris's back. He started pacing, brushing over the living room carpet with his feet. The phone was slick in his sweaty grip. His mind scrambled for a lifeline. I am sleeping in the basement, he insisted defensively. You know things have been bad with us for a while. I told you. We haven't been. We're not, he stumbled. The truth was tangled. It's it's complicated, okay? The words sounded pathetic, and he knew it. He had heard he had heard Nicole suck in a trembling breath on the line. Complicated, she said, as if tasting something bitter and rotten. God, you really are something. Her free hand closed around the curtain cord, and she yanked it hard. The sudden motion sent the curtain swishing shut, cutting off the outside light and leaving her reflected in the dark glass. She stared at her own dim shape, a woman barely recognizable, eyes red and brimming, jaw clenched, heart broken. What is complicated, Chris? You have a wife who's carrying your baby boy, and you have two little girls asleep in your house right now. And then you have me, the idiot who fell for your sweet words, and I believed every single one of them. Nicole's voice broke, a sob hitching in her throat before she forced it down. How on earth is any of that complicated? It's wrong. It's sick, and I walked right into it. Chris stopped pacing. He stood in the middle of the room, bathed in the weak amber glow of a single lamp. His reflection glinted in the dark TV screen across from him. A distorted silhouette with a phone pressed to its head. He barely recognized himself either. His lips moved silently as he struggled to find anything that might fix this. Nicole, I'm sorry, he said at last, his tone pleading. I never wanted to hurt you. You have to believe me. I care about you so much. I'm in love with you. Nicole closed her eyes at those words, a tear escaping down her cheek. She had waited months for him to say that, and now it felt hollow, tainted by deceit. She wished she could rewind time, go back to when those words would have made her weak with joy. But now they only stoked the fire of her fury. Don't, she whispered, voice raw. Don't you dare say that to me right now. She wiped the tear away harshly with the back of her hand. If you loved me, you would have been honest with me from the start. You would have told me that your wife is pregnant, that there was still something between you two. But instead, you fed me this fantasy that we had a future together, that you were done with your family. Jesus, Chris, do you even hear yourself? He opened his mouth to protest, but she barreled on, words finally unleashing after weeks of suspicion and pain. I spent all these nights imagining our life together while your wife was home picking out baby names and decorating a nursery, Nicole cried. The mental image gouged at her, Shanann painting a room soft blue, cradling her glowing belly, completely unaware that her husband was in another woman's bed. Do you have any idea how disgusting that makes me feel? You made me the other woman in your perfect little suburban life. That's not what I signed up for, Chris. That's not who I want to be. Her voice rose on that last sentence, cracking another sob. Chris yanked the phone away from his ear as the sound pierced through him. Something twisted inside his chest, a retching knot of guilt, panic, and anger. He pressed the phone back to his ear, desperation creeping into his tone. I never meant for any of this to happen, he pleaded. His eyes darted around the shadowed room as if the answers might be scrawled on the walls. When I met you, God, Nicole, you were like a light in my life. I was in such a dark place and you made me feel alive again. He ran a hand through his short hair, pulling at it anxiously. I didn't plan on it, but I fell for you. And yes, I should have told you about the baby. I know that. I was scared, okay? His voice cracked on the last word. He was scared. Scared of losing her, scared of the mess his life had become. Nicole sniffled, trying to rein in her tears. A fraught pause followed, filled only by the low hum of the ceiling fan above Chris and the distant rush of traffic from Nicole's end. The city beyond her window kept flickering in, if indifferently. Each light of life wasn't each light of life that wasn't falling apart like hers. Scared of what? She asked quietly. Of me leaving? Or are you facing what you've done? Chris's throat tightened. He stared at the floor, noticing for the first time that he was standing in a small patch of light directly under the fan, as if dimly as if it was a dimly lit stage. He felt exposed, caught in the act. Both he both, he admitted in a strained whisper. I was scared you'd walk away if you knew I'd got her pregnant, and I didn't want to face it myself. Things between Shanann and me were already broken. The baby, it was an accident. I swear it just happened, but it doesn't change anything about how I feel about you. I love you, Nick. I was going to leave her for you. I still will. Nicole let out a sharp breath. As his confession poured out, her tears had stopped, replaced by cold clarity that cut through her like ice. An accident, she repeated, voice low and furious, like you tripped and fell into her bed, right? And now you think you'll just walk away from it all, just like that. Her words dripped with sarcasm and hurt. You keep saying you'll leave her. So tell me, Chris, when? After your son is born? When were you planning to finally be honest? Were you going to, was, there was never going to be a right time, was there, Chris? You were never going to tell me about any of this unless you got caught, right? Chris's mouth opened, but no defense came. The truth of the accusation hung heavy between them. God, Nicole, he whispered. I can't believe. Oops. God, Nicole whispered, the realization hitting her anew. I can't believe I fell for all of it. A bitter laugh escaped her lips, then turned into a sob. She swiped away at her eyes angrily. I can't do this, Chris. I can't be part of your lies anymore. Nick, wait, Chris pleaded, his voice cracking. I can't ever trust you again, Chris. She continued, each word trembling. Don't you get that? Everything between us is tainted now, and I don't want to see you anymore. Her words hit Chris like a physical blow. It was as if the floor had dropped out from under him. He lurched forward, catching himself on the arm of the couch to keep from falling. Don't, he croaked, barely recognizing his own voice. Don't do this, please, Nick. I'll fix everything. I'll prove to you that I mean it. I'll end it with her. I'll do whatever it takes. Just don't walk away. Not now. Nicole was quiet for a moment. And in that moment, Chris hung on desperately to the silence, praying it meant that she was reconsidering. When she finally spoke, her tone was eerily calm and distant. If you were going to do whatever it takes, you should have done it already. She sighed, a tired, broken sound. Do what you need to do for yourself, Chris, but I can't be a part of this anymore. I'm sorry. Chris's eyes burned with tears. Nicole, please. "I'm so sorry it turned out like this," she said softly. A faint beep sounded on the line. Then there was nothing but silence. Chris stood there in the dark living room, phone still pressed to his ear even after the call cut out. Slowly, he pulled it away and stared at the screen, which now read "Call ended" in stark letters. Nichol was gone. The realization struck him with crushing force. He had finally lost her. An inarticulate sound bubbled up from his chest, half sob and half snarl. In one violent motion, Chris hurled the phone onto the couch. It bounced off of the cushion and thudded to the floor. A red haze of fury and despair clouded his vision. He couldn't contain it. The scream tore out of him before he even knew it was coming. "God damn it," he bellowed, voice cracking on the curse. His arm lashed out blindly, snatching a forgotten coffee mug from the table and hurled it across the room with all of his might. The ceramic hit the wall beside the kitchen door with an explosive crack. The mug shattered on impact. Pieces of porcelain spraying across the floor. A dark splash of cold coffee dribbled down the wall. For a few seconds, the house felt silent again, save for the sound of Chris's own ragged breathing. Then came a soft, frightened whimper from up the stairs. Chris's head snapped up. On the staircase landing, Bella stood in her pony print pajamas, eyes wide and overflowing with tears. She was trembling so hard she could barely keep upright. Behind her, in the doorway of her room, was her 3-year-old sister Celeste, half hidden, clutching a blanket to her chest. Both girls looked paralyzed in fear. Bella's lower lip quivered. A dark stain spread down one leg in her pink pajamas. She had been frozen in terror, wetting herself at the sound of her father's scream. The sight hit Chris like a punch in the gut. The red haze in his mind vanished, replaced by a cold clarity and shame. His anger evaporated in an instant, leaving only horror at what he had done. Chris's heart twisted painfully as he took a cautious step toward the stairs. He raised his hand to gesture of surrender, his voice coming out soft-spoken and broken, worlds away from the furious roar that had rattled the walls just a few moments ago. "I'm sorry, Bella," he whispered, each word gentle and earnest. "I didn't mean to yell. Let's get you cleaned up and back into bed." Bella nodded shakily, too upset to speak. Chris's voice was so tender and warm, completely at odds with the raging stranger who had stood there just moments before. As he shepherded his daughter back towards her bedroom with careful and gentle movements, the shards of the broken mud glittered on the floor behind him. In the hush of the house, the only sound was the faint hum of the ceiling fan, still slicing lazy circles through the heavy air, as if nothing had happened at all. In this scenario, the 111-minute call was an explosive argument that ultimately prompted Chris to decide that very night to end it with his wife. A decision that, in a twisted and tragic turn, became literal. Nichol's rage and ultimatum lit the fuse, and her reluctant encouragement, "Do it tonight," pushed Chris over the edge. In the aftermath, Nichol would awaken on Monday to the news that Shanann and the girls were missing. Perhaps she would recall her midnight drive and feel a sickening dread. She might delete their text history, panicked at how damning her pressure might look on him. In her phone, any messages of angers or ultimatums from the night would quickly disappear, leaving no trace of how her rage may have stoked a killer's resolve. And the public looking in from the outside would forever wonder if a 111-minute lover's quarrel could be the spark that ignited a massacre. So, guys, that is the first one. What do you guys think? I wish I was a better actor and I could act it out a little better. But yeah. I'm just kind of looking through the comments here, guys. Gerald 2 cents says, I don't think Chris thought of anything at the oil sites. He had completely dissociated and didn't feel anything. Yeah, this version of the story that I just told, I kind of set it up in a way that the anger is there. Because, we know that he murdered his family. We don't know what provoked it for sure. We have lots of speculation with that. But to me, it makes sense that there would be these little outbursts that happened leading up to the event. And these, there's some people who believe that maybe the daughters were actually murdered in the house and transported to the oil site later. I think this scenario that I've written here kind of leaves that possibility open. I think for me personally, I think this is most likely what had happened. I think they had fought. I think she had found out that, everything. I realize that a lot of you guys think that she had been stalking the Wattses before she even met Chris. I'm not so sure about that. Um, and if she was, I wonder if maybe she would have stopped watching after she started hanging out with Chris to avoid the jealousy that she would feel seeing him with her. So, I mean, in that way, maybe she had been still stalking them and knew everything about Chris and Shanann before any of this happened. But maybe she didn't know that Shanann was pregnant because she had stopped watching her Facebook channel. Um, I think there's a lot going on in that phone call. I mean, I've got 5 versions of this 43-page thing that I have. You know, I've got 5 different versions, 5 different scenarios here. The next one, I don't know that it's as good. I didn't get a chance to go back through it and edit it ahead of time like I did the first one. Um, but yeah, so I just need a minute or so to like rest my voice for a second. Ron says, I wonder if through mutual Facebook friend, Nick NK saw something about Thrive and maybe innocently clicked Shanann at first. I'm not really sure, but the fact that Shanann was on Facebook and she actually was live a lot, talking about her family, not just Thrive. I think that, there's the possibility for sure that Nichol Kessinger had seen it. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I kind of like Google the people I'm dating, now beforehand. Maybe this would have popped up. Um, let's see. Bunny Blue 12 says she insisted she didn't know Shanann was pregnant, but that I'm not sure what that abbreviation is, next Tuesday was looking at her profile on the regular. Yeah, and Cuffyu says, Ron, I agree with you, but what I cannot agree is that once she found Chris, that she didn't manipulate the hell out of him. That is a possibility. Ice says, then why not say that at her police interviews if she was innocent? Um, they never really said why they didn't believe that she had participated in any way. Um, I get stuck on that officer who's like, well, it is suspicious that you deleted everything on your phone because it really is. Um, we don't know what they didn't find. Obviously, they found some information after she deleted it, but maybe not everything. Um, Cuffy says, if you don't think for one second that Nicole was involved hands on in this tragedy, I would love to hear your reasoning. Well, here's the thing for me. I kind of go back and forth on this. Mostly, like the biggest evidence that I hold against her is that she deleted everything on her phone. She deleted everything on her computer. She tried to cover her tracks. And when she is investigated, she is constantly just um, inserting herself into the scenario like it's the most important thing. I think that selfishness is possibly normal behavior. Like she knows that something terrible has just happened and she knows how it's going to change her life and she's trying desperately to make that not happen. So, I mean, if she hadn't deleted everything on her phone, I don't think we would be talking about her today like this. I don't think there would be as much speculation um, on anything. But the fact that she said, I can't remember what we talked about, that's just baffling to me because I can almost, give you a general idea of like any conversation I've had like in the last couple of weeks. Um, so I feel bad suggesting that she is absolutely guilty because I don't know that for sure. But I am very suspicious. I think at the very least, she was probably trying to get rid of Chris to break up, and that probably caused all of this to happen. Gerald's 2 cents says, also Chris's colleagues knew Shanann. Some of their wives were also thriving, and they would have congratulated Chris about the baby. And that's interesting because then it would be out there out loud at the workplace, possibly within Nichol Kessinger's, earshot. Um, Kitty hates crap. You don't do anything she said she did with her text and SIM card unless you have a guilt complex for whatever reason. That's interesting that some people do just feel guilty all the time. And I think they look guilty all the time. It doesn't necessarily mean that you actually are guilty. You just feel guilt and it shows outwardly. Um, Guffu says, if Tammy Lee had gotten a hold of NK, I'm guessing, this would have gone a whole different direction. I thought the same thing until I finally saw that 2-second conversation with Tammy and Nicole in one of the interviews. And you can actually hear the empathy in Tammy's voice as she's talking to Nicole for like a half a second. I think they exchanged maybe a half a dozen words or, a little bit more. But it sounded to me in that moment that she had already made the decision that Nicole hadn't done anything. And, that is one of the things that kind of pushes me back to, I don't know anymore. Like, um, it's a weird thing. I'm open to the possibility of either the guilt or not guilt. Um, I wish that I knew for sure. I wish that I could talk to her and find out what really happened, or at least her version of what really happened. Um, it's just insane that she deleted those text messages because that could have proved a whole bunch of things. Um, and I'm gonna go ahead and get started on the next one. Part of me feels like maybe I should just skip to the fifth one, the one that I've been writing the last couple of days. Um, but I think I should just kind of go through all of these as best as I can, time permitting, um, and assuming you guys are enjoying these. So this one I call Whispers in the Dark. A moth circled the porch light outside. Its faint thumps against the glass lost to the summer night. Inside the Watts home, Chris lay sprawled on the living room couch, phone cradled against his ear. He wore a loose t-shirt and shorts from the day, his body pleasantly drained from an evening workout. The house was silent. The girls, long since tucked into bed, Shanann still away on her business trip. In this quiet, in this quiet, stolen moment, he could almost imagine this was his life, a bachelor pad, late night, easy conversations with the woman who truly stirred his heart. On the other end of the line, Nicole's laughter tinkled softly. No way, you did not, she was saying, voice hushed and intimate. I did, Chris chuckled. I swear I was so nervous waiting for you that first time. I nearly knocked over the display of protein bars in the lobby. The receptionist gave him the weirdest look. Nicole's warm giggle sent a flush of happiness through him. I wish I'd have seen that, she murmured. But you seemed so calm when I finally came out to meet you, all handsome and cool, like you did that sort of thing every day. Chris grinned into the darkness. Trust me, I was dying inside. The thought you might change your mind and not show up, not a chance. Her tone softened at the memory. I got so excited I'd been peeking out the window since lunchtime, wondering which car was yours. When I finally saw you, hmm, she made a playful purring noise. Blue button-down shirt, sunglasses, leaning against your truck like something out of a movie. I nearly melted. He felt a flutter of pride. Funny, I remember you walking towards me in that white blouse and black shirt. I forgot how to breathe for a second. Thought, this woman is out of my league. Oh, stop it, she cooed. You had me hooked from hello and the soft glow of her phone screen. Chris saw the call timer ticking upward. 45 minutes so far of this blissful reminiscence. It amazed him how easy it was to talk to Nicole when things were good. No stress, no eggshells, none of the icy tension that had dominated his text with Shanann that day. Nicole, with Nicole, he felt young and alive and understood. She laughed at his jokes. She listened. She really listened. And when they fell into comfortable silences, it wasn't awkward. It was charged, like it was right now. Chris's voice grew quieter. I miss you, he confessed. He could hear his own heartbeat, wondering how she might respond. I miss you too, Nicole whispered. It's only been a day, but it feels longer. I wish I was there right now. Chris's pulse quickened. Yeah? Mm-hmm. There was a sultry undertone to her agreement. I wish I was there curled up on the couch with you. Chris swallowed. Throat suddenly dry, he glanced at the stairwell as if a ghost might be watching. But the house was still. Shanann's flight wouldn't land for a couple more hours. They were truly alone. What would you do, he ventured, if you were here? Nicole's soft laugh was his reward. Oh, lots of things, she purred. For starters, I'd run my fingers along your chest, feel those muscles of yours, and see how you've been working out so hard lately. He inhaled sharply, adjusting how he lay so that the sudden tightness in his shorts wasn't uncomfortable. He dropped to a murmur. Keep going. I'd snuggle up under your arm, she continued, her words slow, deliberate. Lay my head on your shoulders. My hair might tickle your neck a little. Can you feel it? His eyes closed, imagining her dark hair brushing against his skin. Yeah, I can. And I'd probably start planting little kisses right here, she paused, on your neck just below your ear. I know that spot drives you crazy. He did. He bit back a groan as a wave of arousal rolled over him. God, Nicky. He reached down to adjust himself, heat blooming across his face despite being alone. I can almost hear you blushing, she teased. Don't get shy on me now. I'm not, he protested softly, smiling, just picturing it, you in my arms. Nicole's voice curled around him like smoke. Do you remember the last time in my bed the night before you left that morning? You pulled me on top of you and I remember, he interjected, his breath glowing shallow. I remember everything. He could almost smell her perfume right now, a light floral trace that lingered on his skin whenever they parted. Then tell me, she whispered, tell me what you'd do to me if I was there. Chris let out a shaky breath. He wasn't used to speaking his desires. Shanann had usually taken the lead in moments of intimacy. For the past couple of months, there had been none at all between them. But with Nichol, it was different. He wanted to give her everything, show her everything that he usually kept locked away. I'd start by kissing you, he began, long and deep, the way you like. How do I like it? She prompted, a naughty lilt to her voice. Chris felt a grin tug at his lips. Messy, he said, breathless, like we can't get enough of each other. A soft moan escaped Nicole's throat. Yes, and my hands, they'd be on me, Chris finished, all over me, under my shirt, nails digging in just a little when you get excited. He ran a hand over his chest, imagining it was smaller, a smaller hand exploring him. And you'd run your hands down my back, Nicole said, breathing a bit heavier now. Pull me closer, maybe even grab my. I'm going to have to skip some of this, guys. Um, are you Mr. Watts? She cooed. And then don't stop there. His heart pounded. I'd lift you up, he continued, voice thick. Carry you upstairs, or maybe I can't wait that long. Maybe I'd lay you right here on the couch. Oh, spontaneous. I like it. He could hear the sheets rustling on her end. Was she touching herself? He thought, and it sent a little thrill through him. I'd take off that little tank top you wear to bed, he said, licking his lips, kiss you down your stomach. And I'm skipping some more. Nicole inhaled sharply, and I will put this in the this one particularly. I'll put it in the community section. You guys can actually read it and see what I'm skipping. Nicole inhaled sharply. Do it, she urged in a hush. Chris felt heat coiling in his belly. The things they had done together. They had unlocked a sexual chemistry he had never knew he had. He described it to her now in a low, mesmerizing tone, his lips on her thighs, her gasp in the dark, her fingers in his hair as he tasted her, the way she cried out his name when pleasure overtook her, when he murmured that he'd slide off her. Nicole let out a sinful little laugh. Naughty boy, she breathed. You make me so. I'm skipping some more. I forgot about this version. Chris's face burned with desire. A faint sheen of sweat had formed on his brow. He'd slipped free his hand beneath a waistband in his short, unable to resist anymore. Tell me, he whispered, what do you want to do right now? I want you, she whispered. A stifle. He stifled a groan, stoking himself slowly to the rhythm of her words. Her voice crackled, and I'm skipping a bunch, guys. Her voice crackled with need, and it drove him to the near the edge. Nikki, he gasped. I'm so close. Me too, she whispered. Skipping a bunch more. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. Chris lay panting. Nicole was the first to break the silence. Wow, she giggled softly. That was unexpected. Chris laughed under his breath, reaching for a discarded t-shirt on the floor to clean himself up. You started it, he teased. Not that I'm complaining. I'm definitely not complaining, she replied. Though now I really wish you were here to cuddle. His heart twisted. Me too, he said. I hate that we have to be apart. But soon, she whispered, reassuring both him and herself. We soon won't have to be. We'll have every night together. Her words hung in the air, loaded with promise. Chris let himself bask in the future vision, living with Nicole openly, falling asleep with her head on his chest, waking up to her sleepy smile. No more secrets, no more lies. Just then, he wanted it so much it hurt. I can't wait, he murmured. I really can't. On the other end, Nicole yawned. He glanced at the clock. Nearly 11 p.m. Sleepy? He asked gently. A little, she admitted. You wore me out, stud. He could hear the grin in her voice. He smirked. Glad to be of service. A comfortable lull enveloped them. Chris imagined she was likely curled in her bed, lights off, phone beside her face, maybe eyes closed, a content smile on her lip. How he longed to be lying there with her, holding her close as she drifted off to sleep. I wish I could fall asleep with you, he said softly, voicing his thoughts. Then don't hang up, she whispered impulsively. Stay on the line with me until I drift off. We can pretend we're falling asleep together. That tenderness, the suggestion alone melted him. Okay, he agreed. I'm right here. So they stayed connecting, speaking only intermittently in drowsy tones. Nicole asked him about his day with his girls. He told her funny anecdotes about Bella insisting on wearing her Snow White costume all day, and how Celeste tried to feed a slice of banana to their dog. Nicole giggled at the mental image. She genuinely seemed to care about his children, even though they complicated everything. Chris endured her. Chris that endeared her to Chris even more. In turn, he asked about her workday. She described a mundane series of meetings, how she doodled in her notebook, thinking of him, how the guys in the office were clueless that she had someone in her life making her smile. If they only knew, she said slyly, I'm just, they all think I'm just married to my job. Well, you kind of are, Chris joked. Having a secret boyfriend helps, though, right? True, she laughed. Then her voice took on a melancholy note. I'm tired of being a secret Chris. I know, he sighed, staring at a dark knot in the wooden ceiling beam above. It won't be for long. We're close, I promise. She was quiet, and he felt her doubt through the silence. He bit his lip and then added, I talked to a realtor last week just to get an idea of the selling price of this place. Her surprise was palpable. You did? You didn't tell me that. I wanted to be sure I was serious, but I am. I can't keep living this lie. I'm making moves, Nikki. It wasn't exactly a lie. He had called a realtor just to ask about the market, though he didn't mention that to Shanann yet. He had he had looked up some apartment listings as a theoretical place to crash after separating. Of course, all of it felt like half measures given what he had planned, but he needed to reassure her. Her voice warmed with hope. That makes me really happy to hear. Thank you. They stayed entwined in conversation a little longer. Chris's eyes grew heavy. He fought sleep and wanted to be there as long as she needed him. On the other end, Nicole's responses turned into murmurs. Getting sleepy? He asked again. A little, she answered lazily. Your voice is like a lullaby now, a sexy lullaby. He chuckled quietly. Never been called that before. Well, get used to it, she murmured. Then, with a teasing lilt, sing me a lullaby, Mr. Watts. He shook his head with a grin. I can't sing. Try, she yawned. Something soft. He thought for a moment, then softly and off key began humming a tune of a random love song that had been playing when they had first had their first real kiss at his truck. He only remembered a few lines, but he whispered them. I don't know how I found you, but I'm glad I did. Now I'm hopelessly devoted to the life we'll build. His voice trailed off in embarrassment. Nicole made a happy little sigh. That's pretty, she slurred, clearly almost asleep. Hold me. I'm holding you, he whispered back, eyes closing, imagining her pressed against him. Silence. And then, so faint he almost missed it. Good night. I love you. Chris's heart swelled. I love you too, he breathed. He listened a little while longer, hearing her gentle breath on the other side. It was oddly soothing. His own fatigue deepened. Outside, a passing car's headlight flashed across the wall. He suddenly remembered he should set his alarm to make sure he was awake when Shanann got home. With reluctance, he realized he'd have to end the call and didn't want to wake. Didn't want to. He didn't want Nicole to wake to the sound of him moving around, or worse, Shanann's arrival. Clearly, he spoke into the night quietly. Nikki, I'm going to hang up now, okay? I'll call you in the morning. No response. Sweet dreams, baby. He pulled the phone from his ear and ended the call. The silence that followed was oddly loud. He felt an ache as soon as her presence was gone. The reality of where he was and who he was rushed back in. He was a married man, lying on a couch in a house filled with family photos and children's toys. And yet his heart was off in another world, entwined with a woman who had just purred him to a and fell asleep. Chris sat up, raking a hand through his hair. Guilt tried to snake its way in. The image of Shannann's trusting face flitted through his mind, but he pushed it aside. What he shared with Nicole felt right. It felt like the kind of deep, soulful connection that he had once thought only existed in movies and songs. How could something that felt so pure be wrong? It was only wrong because of the timing, he told himself. Once he set things straight, once Shanann knew that he was free, it wouldn't be wrong at all. It would be beautiful. He checked his phone. A text from Shanann a half an hour ago. The flight had landed. They were delayed on the tarmac. Another text. I'll grab my suitcase and be home soon. Love you. He swallowed hard. Love you. He hadn't texted those words back. In fact, he hadn't replied at all yet. The weight of what awaited him upon her return settled deeply into his shoulders. Standing, Chris stretched and tossed the soiled t-shirt into the laundry pile. He had he padded to the kitchen to drink a glass of water, cooling his flushed body, and as he stood in the darkened kitchen, he allowed himself to replay a few moments of the call. Nicole's laughter, her sexy commands, and the way she said, I love you. It brought a smile back to his face despite everything. He also felt a pang of longing. Ending the call had been surprisingly hard. He had grown accustomed to a routine of saying goodnight to her. Now he missed her presence like a phantom limb. With a jolt, he realized this affair had progressed beyond mere thrill. He was deeply in love with Nicole, and that meant he was truly prepared to do whatever it took to be with her. Tonight's conversation had been blissful. Tomorrow, everything would come crashing down. Shanann would expect him to help her carry her luggage, to kiss her hello, maybe even to make love if she was feeling reconciliatory after their recent strains. The thought made him feel slightly ill. The idea of touching Shanann now, what what he had just shared with Nicole, felt almost like a betrayal to Nicole. How twisted was that? He scrubbed his hand over his face. He considered sleeping on the couch to avoid intimacy. Perhaps he could claim he fell asleep watching TV. Yes, that might be best. He could keep things cool, say he was tired and talk in the morning. Yet an idea tugged at him. What if he was affectionate? What if he welcomed Shanann warmly and even seduced her to throw off her suspicion? Nicole had said people at work saw her as married to her job, not knowing her secret. Similarly, if he acted like the loving husband tonight, no one would ever suspect his secret, and it might appease Shanann, who had been worried sick about their marriage. It could buy him more time and peace until he figured out how to end it cleanly. He hated that he even had to calculate such things, but that was reality, at least for a little longer. A faint rumble of a vehicle outside. He glanced at the clock. 1:25 a.m. That must be her. Perfect timing. He had already reset his expression to neutral, and the home looked in order. Nicole's essence lingered only in his mind, undetectable. Headlights swept across the wall and a car as the car dropped Shanann off. Chris unlocked the front door and opened it just as she walked up, dragging her small suitcase. Shanann looked up surprised. Hey, you're awake, she said, sounding pleased but tired. Of course, he lied with an easy smile. Stepping forward to take her suitcase, I missed you. How was your flight? Shanann smiled wearily and leaned in for a hug. Chris wrapped his arms around her dutifully. She felt a small she felt small against him. She had lost some weight, he realized. Long, I'm glad I'm home, she murmured into his chest. She tilted her face up for a kiss. Chris obliged with a brief peck. For a split second, he feared she'd taste his guilt of another woman on his lips, but she only sighed happily. They were inside, As Shanann kicked off her shoes, started chatting quietly about the trip, how the meetings had all gone well, how the baby had been kicking a lot on the plane, how she couldn't wait to have proper doctor's appointments soon. Chris nodded and made sympathetic noises at the right times. Autopilot was engaged. His mind, however, kept drifting upstairs to his phone on the nightstand, where Nichol would soon wake to a good morning text from him with a smiley face. He had led Shanann upstairs, carrying her bag. The girl's bedroom door was closed. He peeked in on them while Shanann went to the bathroom. Both were sound asleep, angelic in the night light's glow. He felt a swell of love for his daughters, followed by a pang of shame. They deserved better. They deserved better than a father living a lie. Back in the master bedroom, Shanann emerged from the bathroom. Having changed into an oversized t-shirt, she paused, looking at him in the soft light. There was a nervousness in her eyes. Chris, I know we've been kind of off lately, she began, but I want us to work, okay? I love you so much. And we have this little boy on the way, and our girls were worth fighting for, right? Her vulnerability tugged at him, sparking an almost reflexive protectiveness. For a moment, he felt tears threaten. How did things get so tangled? Here was the woman he'd once vowed to love forever, now pleading for reassurance. And he, who had just spent 2 hours making love with the voice of a woman on a phone call. He forced a smile and drew her into his arms. Of course we're worth it, he whispered, kissing her on the top of the head. We'll be okay, Shanann, I promise. As he held his wife, Chris closed his eyes. Over her shoulder. In his mind's eye, he saw Nichol's radiant face. Soon, he thought, soon this will all be sorted out. He would find a way. He had to. And in her apartment, a few towns over, Nichol slept soundly, dreaming of the day not far off, where Chris Watts would be completely hers. No more furtive phone calls, no more lonely nights, just the two of them intertwined in love. She had no inkling that at that very moment, in her lover's arms, was the woman whose life that was about to be ended. In this scenario, the 111-minute phone call between Chris and Nichol was not a fight at all, but tender and intimate exchange, even phone sex, bonding them closer. It paints to a picture of two lovers deeply enmeshed in passion and hope for the future together. Chris floating on the high emotional and physical connection with Nichol is perhaps even more motivated to eliminate any barriers to that future. Nichol's I miss you, I wish you were here whispers could have emboldened Chris to take drastic action. So they would never have to spend another night apart. In the aftermath, when the world learned of the crime, one can speculate that this intimacy is part of what Nichols was desperate to erase. The explicit text or call logs could have been incriminating and deeply private, hence her deleting these messages and using secret apps. In this version, her guilt might stem not from participating in the crime, but from the knowledge that their love, their phone call, full of whispers and desires, was the catalyst that steeled Chris's resolve to murder his family. Nichol's various reactions here, from seductive to loving, show a woman fully invested in romance, unaware of a monster that she's been fueling. So that one isn't as good as the first one, but it might be better depending on what you like to read. I'll put it in the in the comments section. um, well, I'll put it on a community post so you guys could read it. But it doesn't cover what happened, why they got murdered. Um, but it's designed to show you that maybe they didn't have anything nefarious planned. Maybe they just were in love. We don't know what Shanann said to Chris, what happened next. What we do know is that night, a couple hours later, Shanann would be dead. Her children would be dead. Um, Everything else is speculation. Even when Chris tells us what happened, we don't know for sure what happened because he lies so frequently about these things. I think there's at least he told like 3 or 4 different stories. The one he first told about Shanann killing the kids, um, the version where he was being intimate with Shanann and just something snapped in him and he just murdered her and then put her in the truck, loaded up the kids, and then murdered them when they got to the final destination. Um, but what do you guys think? You think this is a likely scenario? So Bunny 12 says NK had no alibi for Sunday or Monday. What did I do on Sunday? Oh man, I'm so tired. I don't know. Can I get back to you on that? Yeah, she should remember what she did. And she should remember the basic, what happened in the phone call. And I don't think that if they were having phone sex, that is something that she would have to hide from the police. She could beg them not to make it public somehow. I think that might have worked, but um she just shouldn't have deleted anything on her phone. She should have showed it all, you know. Uh it probably would have changed like the entire country perspective on her because at this point, she's a monster. She's a likely, accomplice in some way to a crime that Chris Watts says he committed himself. Even Chris Watts is, got these letters now that he's sending, in the what was it, the Dylan Tallman book, where he's like, yeah, well, Nichol did push me to do this. But I think he hears the news just like everyone else, and he knows how people are um, think about Nichol. And maybe at first he really was protecting her, but he still somehow thought that she was going to continue to write him while he was in prison, and that somehow they were going to still be together. But I don't see how that would even be possible. Um, I mean, it can't be physically possible for sure, but a person not in prison is going to get bored talking to somebody in letters and, $60 phone calls every week. Thank you, Maribel. I'm glad you like it. The writing. Maribel says she loves your writing. I love your writing. Gerald's 2 cents says their relationship was just sex and chicken and broccoli. And Olga says, and carrots. And Jim left alone. I think you mean, and leave Jim alone. Yeah. So how long have we been going? About an hour and a half. I'm going to take a quick break. Cuffew says, y'all, how funny is it that we all have the interview with NK memorized? It is kind of sad when you put it like that. Yeah, the voodoo sex stuff, I don't know how to even like tell that story. So I couldn't write anything like that. I thought about doing a version with the dark things. Um, I've written about it a few times. I've got like all kinds of different things written out. Most of the stuff I've written is more like a documentary style. Um, I've only been doing the like novel kind of style for a couple months, just because it's easier to write it that way. It feels more like a story, and it doesn't feel so repetitive when I talk about it. um, but I am going to take a quick break. So when we get back, I think I'm just going to go ahead and skip to the last one. Um, well, no, I think you guys are going to love this next one. The next one is the plan for murder. I think I got to do this one. Um, so we might actually have to take a break and finish the other two tomorrow. But the last one is probably the best one. And I'm trying to see how many pages this one is. I'd say it's probably a good 3,000 words. So it's not going to be short. So if you guys need to take a break, go get a drink or something. Now's a good time. I will be back in like 2 minutes. Okay, maybe I'll leave in just a second. I'm trying to see how many words are here, but there we go. It doesn't tell me. Okay. Well, I'll be right back. Hey guys, I'm back. Yeah, Victoria, I agree. Um, I wish there was a way that we could know for sure that something so drastic is going to happen, and then get ourselves out of that situation. But with Chris Watts, there was no domestic violence that had ever happened before the murders. So he was probably like repressing all of his anger, maybe his entire life. And, with everything kind of piling up on him, he just snapped. He could have been, you know, talked into it, but I think more likely he just lost his mind and just basically went crazy. So is everybody still here? We lose some people. I'm just trying to see how long this one is because some of these are pretty long. It's kind of hard to like stop writing some of these things. This one is about 10 pages on a regular Word document with regular size font. It's actually quite long, and I haven't had a chance to revise it since the last time I did, and I wrote this one quite a while ago. So I kind of feel like I should have checked it out ahead of time. Um, but I've written several things like this over the last several months, just to kind of like, I don't know, see the drama, not just it's just different. I don't really buy into everything that I hear. I listen to everything. I don't necessarily believe everything I hear. And a lot of the stuff that I do hear, I kind of like take it in with a grain of salt and then come up with my own opinions on what had happened. Um, the truth is the facts that we know are not in, they're just not very detailed. We know that the murders happened, and everything else in between is kind of, maybe this happened, maybe that happened. It's kind of hard to say. So I'm going to look through some of the comments here before we get started again. Gerald 2 Cents says they were obsessed with sex and body image. They were narcissists. Cuffy says it's not sad. I think that was because what I said. It's kind of sad that we know all this stuff. Um, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like there's better things that I can put in my brain than these things. But yeah, I guess it's knowledge. Um, Ice says, in my opinion, it's only memorized because we all know that it doesn't make sense. And, I agree with that too. Um, there are a lot of red flags that happen in those interviews. And, I've actually heard that there might have been a couple other interviews that weren't recorded. And if they weren't recorded, I would really like to know what was said. Because maybe there's something we don't know that the police do know. Um, Maribel says, I saw a psychologist channel today that um, said the silent treatment is manipulative and a form of abuse. It's control. And you know what? I can tell you personally, I know what that feels like. I spent 12 years getting that silent treatment. And I mean, it really is horrible feeling when you get no response. I mean, it really feels bad. Um, and let's see. Carrie B says she's still here. Olga says, welcome back. Sandy must have noticed the change in Chris. Um, Olga says parents do feel, especially Sandy, and I think we can see that in some of the interviews from, the beginning and the way she kind of handles some of the stuff that's out there. Um, she does deeply still care about her family, and, she should feel that way about her family. I don't think that there's any good way to remember, this, and, the fact that it's a nationally known story, that it's still being talked about, um, 6 years later, 8 years later, I forget what it is, 6 years later. Like, is it ever gonna stop? Like, it's gotta be hard. But the one thing that I think the reason why it continues is because it's easy for people to see the life before and the life after. It's easy to kind of figure out um, the relationship dynamics. We've seen how Chris was with his girlfriend. We see how he is with his wife, and we can see some of that based off of the text messages. I think when the Netflix documentary came out, it was way more clear what they were living, the life that they were living at the time. And I mean, it's just a really horrible, but it's a very clear image of what can happen when communication is non-existent in a marriage. Um, I did that thing about the family annihilators the other day, and there's still more that I could talk about for that. Um, but the domestic violence part of you know the buildup for a lethal attack, a lethal domestic violence. Um, there's all these red flags, and these red flags can, they can cause a whole bunch of different things. And lethal, um, a lethal outcome is so unlikely. But the fact that we can see that it is possible, it's like a wake up call. And I think the more people that know this, the more people who are aware of it, the less likely it'll keep happening. So I'm going to kind of go ahead and get started. I hope that I still got a voice. Um, but I think after this one, I'm going to end it. And then tomorrow around the same time, I'll do the other two. The last one I think is, you guys are probably going to like think, why have I never thought of that before? um, okay. A single lamp lit the Watts living room, casting long shadows that flickered as if alive. Chris sat on the carpet, his back against the couch, legs drawn up. The phone lay on speaker mode on the floor between his feet, and Nicole's disembodied voice filled the space around him. There was an intensity crackling in the air that had nothing to do with anger or seduction. This was something colder, something more calculating. So, she's definitely coming home tonight, Nicole asked, her tone clipped and focused. Yes, Chris replied, staring blankly at a dark TV screen as if it were a window into the future. Her flight is supposed to land at 11. She should be here by, I don't know, a quarter to 12 or so. There was a pause. Nicole inhaled audibly. And you're sure you're ready to do this now? Chris's jaw tightened. He'd been asking himself that all day, ever since Nicole's earlier text that had set this entire chilling conversation into motion. I can't do this anymore. We need to talk tonight about everything. When he called, heart pounding. She had stunned him by laying it all out in plain terms. She was tired of waiting, tired of living in fear of Shanann discovering them, tired of being second. It was time to end it, truly end it. And if he didn't have the guts, then I'm ready, he said now in a low voice. We went over the details, right? I'll take care of it before the morning. He said it like it was a task on a list, not the annihilation of his family. The detachment in his own tone frightened him, though. Nichol exhaled, slightly shaky. Okay, tell me again how you'll do it. I need to hear it. Chris ran his hand over his face. Shanann gets in late. The kids will be asleep. I'll make sure they stay asleep. As I was thinking of giving them some, I don't know, Benadryl or something, so they don't have to wake up if there's a noise. On the other end of the phone, Nichol didn't react with horror or shock. She had already heard this plan about an hour ago. And though it had made her silent for a long time, she had not said no. Now she was simply, now she simply responded, "That's probably smart." They can't see anything. There was a strained hardness to her voice, as if she had to force each word through a tight throat. Chris nodded to himself. Yeah, and when Shanann comes in, I'll act normal at first, help her with her suitcase or whatever. But once she's in the bedroom, I'll do it quick, from behind maybe, so that she doesn't see it coming. His voice wavered only slightly. He cleared his throat. The image of Shanann's trusting face flashed in his mind. He tried to replace it with thoughts of being free with Nichol, of never having to worry about Shanann again. It was horrifying how alluring the thought had become. God, Nichol muttered under her breath. Okay, quick is best, I guess. And the kids? Chris's heart thumped painfully. The kids. This was the part that had caused him to break down sobbing earlier. When they first botched it, or when they first broached it, he had pressed the phone to his forehead and wept for Bella and Cece, saying he couldn't hurt them. That's where he had drawn the line in his own mind initially. But Nicole's voice had been eerily calm when she responded, though it was tinged with a little sorrow. Chris, you can't leave them motherless. Not after this. You can't leave any witnesses either. It was then that he knew there was no line anymore. If Shanann was to be erased from the equation, the girls, tragically, in Nicole's ruthlessly logical view, they had to go too. Otherwise, their lives would be ruined, or he'd lose them anyway to prison, or they'd always carry the trauma of losing their mother. Maybe it's a mercy, Nichol had whispered, almost to herself. They won't grow up suffering without their mother. They'll just never know. So now, answering her question, Chris felt numb. The kids will go after, he said flatly. I'll do it in their sleep. They won't feel a thing. His voice cracked on the last word, betraying a hint of the fathomless grief and revulsion he was holding at bay. He quickly added, that's the only way. We talked about this. I know, Nichol said quickly. I know it's awful, but it's best for them not to live with that kind of trauma. She repeated the twisted logic as if to convince herself anew. They'll be in heaven with their mom, innocent, pure, and not in pain. Her tone was oddly gentle, like a mother consoling a frightened child. Yet the words were chilling. Chris shut his eyes. He pictured Bella's gap-toothed smile, Cece's infectious giggle, and his stomach churned, and he bent over, resting his forehead on his knees. Maybe I could spare them, he whispered suddenly, anguish seeping through. I could take them to my parents or no, Nicole's voice was sharp, almost panicked. No, Chris, we talked about this. If you leave them alive, you'll lose them forever. You'll be in jail. She lowered her voice to a strained hush. Or even if you somehow don't get caught, you'll be a single dad to two traumatized little girls. And I can't. She didn't finish, but he knew what she meant. I can't raise them with you. I can't be a stepmother to the children of the mother we killed. She had not said it in so many words, but it was plain. The girls were Shanann's, and if Shanann was gone, they would always be a living reminder. It was a brutal calculus. Nicole had cried when they confronted it, but she didn't waver. We have to be together, just you and me, a clean slate, she said, haltingly through tears. If you want that too, this is the only way. Chris had always thought he can never hurt his children, but here he was preparing to do just that, because the alternative, losing them in a messy divorce or losing Nicole too, felt somehow worse to the warped mind he was operating with now. The affair had become an obsession, a fever that made him see his own family as obstacles, not loved ones. He hated himself for it, yet he was marching toward it step by step. Okay, he said weakly. Okay. He lifted his head, staring at the phone through bleary eyes. After it's done, I'll take the bodies out to the site. The oil tanks, Nicole affirmed softly, as if reciting a plan for disposing of yard waste. They'll be safe there for a long time. You know those sites well. Nobody will think to check an old oil tank. He nodded. That was his contribution to the plan. He knew his work sites, the remote areas where he could hide what would be left of his life. One particular oil battery, Survey 319, had two mostly empty crude oil tanks and a quiet little patch of earth nearby, good for a grave. It was far enough away from the main road that he shouldn't be seen, and he'd be scheduled to go there for work on Monday morning anyway. He would appear he could appear to discover the crime then. His breath shook as he elaborated. I'll load them into my truck early before neighbors are out. I'll have the tools ready. It'll look like I'm heading to the job real early. Right. Nicole's voice tightened at the mental image. And you'll put Shanann where? In a hole. I can dig something quick at the site. It's soft dirt, he replied, reciting the technicalities like they were someone else's problem. The girls, I'll put them in the oil tanks. The opening is small, but they're little. He nearly gagged as he said that, a tear finally rolling down his face. He quickly wiped it away. There was a strangled sound on Nicole's side, perhaps a sob stifled or a gasp. Jesus Christ, she whispered. We're really doing this. Silence fell. Both of them stared into their separate voids, contemplating the horror. Chris broke it, voice hoarse. It was your idea. It came out more accusatory than he had intended. Nicole bristled. Don't you dare put this all on me, she snapped, fear and anger lacing her words. I didn't force you to do anything, Chris. I asked you to choose. I begged you to find another way, divorce or something. You said it wouldn't work. You're the one who said Shanann would make your life hell. take the kids, and ruin us. You said that you would rather die than lose everything in court." Her voice wavered, turning to a plea. "This was the only way you could see. I'm just trying to support you to make it work." Chris winced. She wasn't wrong. He had been the one to first utter the unthinkable weeks ago. In a moment of despair, "Sometimes I wish they could just disappear." Nicole had been shocked. Told him not to say such things, but the seed was planted. Over many secret talks with every argument with Shanann, every worry about finance, with every fear that he'd lose his girls in a divorce, that seed had grown twisted roots. They started asking themselves hypothetically at first, what if Shanann wasn't around? What if the kids weren't around either? If they'd done with her on some trip, what if they had gone with her on some trip and none of them ever returned? Each time they recoiled, swearing they didn't mean it, until one day Chris had said it clear as day. "I could make it happen. We'd be free." Nicole had cried then, told him never to say it again, but in the following days, she didn't leave him. And he brought it up again. She cried less. That night, she stopped crying and instead started talking logistics with him. He knew the last shred of their morality had burnt away in the heat of their obsession. "You're right," he sighed. "I'm sorry." A stifle on the other end. "I just never thought I'd be involved in something like this," she said quietly. "I love you, Chris, and I want our life together, but I'm so scared." His heart ached. "Baby, I know, me too. After tonight, though, it'll all be over. We'll have each other. We'll get through whatever comes." He wasn't sure if he was reassuring her or himself. Nicole's next words were trembling. What if you get caught?" He closed his eyes. That was a possibility that loomed like a storm cloud. "I won't," he said, trying to sound convincing. "I know how to make it look. I'll act worried. I'll play the part of a concerned husband and father who finds his family missing. Hell, Shanann's friends are already worried about her because she hasn't answered her calls tonight. Maybe they'll report her missing while I'm at work. Then I will come home. I'll act shocked. I'll let the cops search. They'll find nothing. The bodies, uh, no bodies, at least not right away. No crime scene here if I do a good job cleaning it up. You'll have to be so careful with the mess," she cautioned quickly. "We talked about that. Bleach, gloves, everything. I know I will." He had a mental checklist. He bought a heavy-duty trash bag and latex gloves and extra bottles of bleach, telling the cashier at Walmart it was for a paint project. They'd shared a banal joke about summer cleaning and how surreal it had been. Nicole continued in a rush. "And get rid of her phone. Don't forget, text something from it, maybe like to a friend, to mislead the timing. And the ring, you said you'd leave her ring, make it look like she just took it off." "Yes, her phone. I was thinking I'll toss it out in some random dumpster on my way to work. And her wedding ring, I'll leave it on the nightstand like she had abandoned it." Good. Nicole was thinking like a criminal now, adapting as they went. "People will think she left in anger, took the kids. Maybe that buys time. If you're lucky, they'll think she ran off on her own. Maybe." Chris wasn't fully convinced. Shanann's friends knew that she wouldn't ghost like that, but confusion could only help. A pause. Then Nicole, almost inaudible. "Will it hurt them?" Chris knew she wasn't asking about Shanann. No, he choked out. I'll smother them in their sleep. They won't even know. It'll be like falling into a deeper sleep. He heard Nicole start to cry softly. Those poor babies, she murmured. I'm so sorry, Chris. His eyes welled up. For a moment, his resolve teetered. Could he really do this? Kill his own flesh and blood? The weight of it was crushing. But then he thought of tomorrow, of having to face the ruin of his double life if he didn't. He imagined Shanann furious and heartbroken at a divorce, fighting him viciously in court. He imagined the girls crying because mommy and daddy were at war. He imagined himself alone, having lost Nicole too because she couldn't handle the drama. That life seemed like endless misery versus the alternative, a short, sharp horror and then freedom. His temples throbbed. We can back out, he whispered suddenly, voice trembling. Maybe we can find another way. No, Nicole cut in, surprisingly firm despite her tears. No, Chris, there is no other way now. Do you want to lose me? Do you want to lose everything? Because if you don't do this now, tonight, I guarantee Shanann's going to know something's up. She's been suspicious for weeks. If you back out now, you'll either have to confess to her or keep lying, and I can't keep doing this. Her breath hitched. I need this to end. I need us to have a fresh start. He knew she was right. If he faltered now, the house of cards would collapse just on top of him instead of conveniently cleared away. Shanann would figure out the affair, or already, she had probably already suspected. She might actually confront Nicole. She had Shanann's Nicole had Shanann's number from that one time she saw it in Chris's phone, he recalled. It could get really messy. I won't back out, he assured her, steeling himself. I promise. Another silence filled only by anxious breathing. The clock ticked on. It was nearly 11. Nicole spoke up, voice raw but determined. So after everything, you'll text me, right? When you're done, so I know you're okay? Chris's mouth went dry. When he was done, he wasn't even sure what state he'd be in, but he would need her then more than ever. Yes, I'll text you or call you as soon as I can, probably from the work truck before I dial 911 or whatever. Okay, she sniffled. I wish I could hug you right now. He let out a pained breath. Me too. I wish you were here. Or, no, actually, I'm glad you're not here. You probably shouldn't see this. God, no. She agreed hastily. Then, soft, I'll be with you in spirit. Remember why you're doing it, and remember I love you. We'll have a beautiful life, I swear. We'll make this worth it. He latched onto that like a lifeline. A beautiful life with her. It's all he ever really wanted. I love you, Nicole, he said, voice cracking. So much. I love you too, Chris. She was openly crying now, but her words were clear. Finish this and come back to me. His eyes spilled over. Okay, okay. They sat on the line for a few moments longer, both crying quietly from the sheer enormity of what was to come. Finally, Nicole composed herself. It's almost time, she whispered. She'll be there soon. Yeah. He heard the rumble of a distant car outside and wondered morbidly if she had gotten home early, if she was being delivered to her death. I should go get ready, get the things. Be careful, she urged. No mistakes. You know what to do. It sounded like she was trying to convince herself, too. I know. He took a deep breath, wiping his face. Goodbye. I mean, not goodbye, just we'll talk soon. The word goodbye felt ominous. I'll be waiting, Nicole said. And Chris, you're not a bad person. His breath hitched. How can you say that? Because I know in your heart. Because I know your heart, she replied. This is an act of desperation. I know you think it's the only way to save yourself, to save us, and I forgive you for it. I just hope one day you'll forgive me for pushing. He nearly broke then, a sob escaping. We forgive each other, he managed. Yes. She fell silent then. Go on. And he nodded, then realized she couldn't see. Bye, Nikki. Bye. Her voice lingered, and then the call disconnected. The sudden silence in the room was deafening. Chris remained on the floor for a moment, feeling the enormity of solitude. He wanted to scream. He wanted to vomit. He wanted to smash his head against the wall, to wake up from this nightmare. But he did none of those things. He rose on unsteady feet and moved through the house like a phantom, collecting what he needed: a pair of latex gloves tucked into his pocket, a roll of trash bags placed into the garbage, a container of bleach, and old rags under the sink, ready. He went upstairs to the girls' rooms with shaking hands, administered a small dose of children's Benadryl to each, rousing them just enough to swallow the syrupy liquid. Bella mumbled sleepily, "Daddy?" And he stroked her hair until she fell back into a slumber. Tears streamed down his face as he did the same for little Celeste, who didn't even wake up as the medicine went down her throat. "I'm so sorry," he choked out into the darkness of their rooms, kissing each of them on the forehead one last time. They smelled of baby shampoo and innocence. He had to clamp a hand over his mouth to suppress a howl of agony threatening to burst out. Downstairs, headlights washed over the walls, a car turning onto a street. It was time. The adrenaline surged, forcing his grief and reluctance into a small locked box for now. He moved swiftly into the kitchen, grabbing the prepared vial he had filled earlier with some of Shanann's leftover narcotic pain medication from her surgery. He planned to slip it into her drink to weaken her, maybe make her drowsy and defenseless. A final kindness, he told himself. The garage door began to actually. Chris donned the latex gloves and flexed his fingers. Then he realized the gloves might be suspicious if Shanann sees them on him. He quickly stripped them off and shoved them back into his pocket. He would wear them only when handling the aftermath. Right now, he needed to appear normal. He took a deep breath, wiped his face, and practiced a smile. Showtime. Chris waited, heart pounding, as she got out of the car and started walking up the stairs, forcing a yawn to appear as if he'd been sleepy, not conspiring to kill her moments before. "Hey, you're up," she said as she opened the door. Her voice warm despite the tiredness. "Hey, Shan," he greeted softly. He moved toward her and instinctively reached for the suitcase. He took it from her grasp. She let him, touching his arm gratefully. The gesture and her trusting eyes made his stomach twist. "Thanks," she sighed. "Long day. I'm glad to be home." He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Together they walked into the house, Chris carrying her bag. Inside, Shanann kicked off her shoes and stretched. "How are the girls?" she asked quietly. I peeked into the rooms. Chris cleared his throat. "They're okay. They miss you too. They had a good weekend." They hovered near her He hovered near her as she set down her purse, and his mind was racing. Should he do it now? No, he better stick to the plan. Drug her drink, get her into the bedroom, maybe. Shanann rubbed her belly absent-mindedly and looked at him with gentle eyes. I know we need to talk about us, but can it wait till morning? I'm just so beat right now. The irony of her words hit him like a truck. She wanted to talk about us, likely to try and fix things while he was poised to permanently solve those issues in the cruelest way possible. He swallowed. Sure, morning's fine. You should rest. She gave him a tired smile. Thanks. She headed to the kitchen, got a glass of water. Chris shadowed her. His nerves were on fire. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small vial of clear liquid. She turned to grab a cup, and he quickly emptied it into the pitcher of the half-used iced tea on the counter. Shanann filled her cup, and Shanann filled her cup from the tap instead. Internally, he cursed. He'd assumed she might drink the tea. She gulped down the water, then refilled it. So thirsty, she murmured. Chris thought fast. Do you want some iced tea? It might help you sleep. It's the kind of decaf stuff you like. He had hoped his voice sounded casual. She paused mid-sip. Actually, that's not a bad idea. A little sugar and flavor, sure. She moved toward the fridge. I got it. Chris quickly offered, stepping in. He grabbed the pitcher and poured some of it into her glass. His hands trembled slightly, making the liquid slosh. Thanks, Shanann said softly. Their fingers brushed as she took the cup. Again, that warm, trusting smile. You're being so nice. I really hope we can work things out, Chris. His throat closed. He just nodded mutely. She raised the glass to her lips and drank deeply. In a few minutes, those strong sedatives in the cocktail should hit her. Shanann drained the glass. You make it just right every single time, she said, oblivious. Then she stepped close and, to his surprise, wrapped her free arm around him in a hug. Instinctively, he put his arms around her too. Her body against his felt familiar, comfortable, and he realized that he felt no spark, only sadness and tension. She was hugging a man who no longer existed, the loving husband facade that had already died inside of him. I missed you, she whispered. Chris forced out a missed you too. She pulled back and looked up at him. Her eyes searched his. There was pain there. She knew things hadn't been right. Whatever it is, we'll fix it, okay? She pleaded softly. He couldn't respond. His eyes flickered to the clock on the stove. Minutes were flying by, and he needed to move on soon. Let's get you to bed, he said gently. We can talk about it tomorrow when you're fresh. She nodded, relief evidently on her face. She probably expected an argument when she got home, and she was glad for the reprieve. The drug was likely making her a bit woozy at this very second. That tea. Man, I'm just really sleepy all of a sudden. Chris took her hand. Come on. He led her upstairs slowly. She stumbled once, giggling softly. Whoa, see, I'm totally out of it. He mustered a chuckle. Long trip, huh? They reached the bedroom. Shanann let go of his hand and went to her side of the bed and got undressed and fell asleep. Chris walked over to her and she opened her eyes. She asked him, "Are you coming to bed?" He realized he still had his clothes on and his shoes on. Yeah, I'm just going to go check on the girls first. It came out a bit too calm. Shanann murmured approval. almost asleep. The drug was potent. He stepped out and went to the girls' room one final time. Part of him wanting to stay there and never leave, to choose them and throw away the monstrous plan. But the stronger part, fueled by obsession and fear, propelled him back toward the master bedroom after a fleeting goodbye glance at his babies. In the bedroom, Shanann was breathing deeply, not fully asleep, but close. Chris gently took her phone from where it poked out of her purse on the floor. Then he approached the side of her side of the bed. His gloves in his pocket slid back over his hands, and he noticed they were shaking as he reached for her. He had imagined doing it from behind in a hug turned strangle to make it sudden, but she was lying down now. Perhaps this was better. She wouldn't see his face. Slowly, he climbed into bed, straddling her midsection. The mattress shifting made Shanann's eyes flutter open. She looked up in confusion, a groggy smile forming. Chris, what are you? Before she could finish, he acted. He lunged forward and pressed his hands, thick, work-hardened hands, around her throat. He squeezed with all of the force of his turmoil. Shanann's eyes went wide with shock and terror. Instantly, she began to struggle, limbs flailing weakly. The drug had made her sluggish, but adrenaline now coursed through her as survival instincts kicked in. She gurgled, trying to scream, but only choked back a wheeze. Chris felt her nails scratching at his forearms, felt her legs kick beneath him. He held on, tears streaming down his face as he applied relentless pressure. I'm sorry, he gasped out, voice breaking. I'm sorry. Shanann's face contorted in pain and betrayal. In her dimming eyes, he saw a question. Why? She clawed at his arms with more fury, drawing blood even through the gloves. She tried to buck him off, but he was too heavy and determined. It seemed to last forever. In reality, it was only a couple of minutes. Finally, Shanann's movement slowed, then ceased. Her eyes stared sightlessly up at him, and her mouth fell slack. Chris released his grip, shaking all over. He checked for a pulse with trembling fingers. Nothing. The still warm body beneath him was his wife no more, just a corpse now. He climbed off, so stumbling back as horror and relief warred within him. It was done. The first part. He had no time to mourn or reflect. A whimper from the doorway made him whirl around, heart lurching. Bella stood there, rubbing her eyes, her tiny face scrunched in confusion. She must have woken despite the medicine, perhaps sensing something was wrong. Daddy, she mumbled, voice thick with sleep. What's wrong with Mommy? Chris's blood ran cold. Bella had seen him on top of Mommy. Did she understand? Possibly not. In the dark. He rushed over and knelt to her height. She noticed the gloves on his hands and the sweat on his face. Mommy's sick, he whispered, tears slipping down his cheeks. She's okay, but we need to take her to the doctor. The lie poured out of him automatically. Bella's lower lip trembled. She looked past him at the bed. Mommy, she called. Softly, no answer from the figure there. A wave of anguish hit Chris. This was even worse than he had imagined. One of his daughters witnessing the death of their mother. Shh, he said, scooping Bella into his arms. She was so warm and alive. He hugged her tightly, sobbing into her hair. Bella sensed something was very wrong and started to cry too. Is Mommy okay? She kept asking in her tiny voice. Chris could barely see through his own tears. I'll make it okay, he choked out. He carried Bella back to her room. Cece was thankfully still asleep. He laid Bella down in her bed. She was crying softly now, confused and scared. He fumbled, pulling a blanket up to her chin. This was it, the last line to cross. Everything in him screamed not to do it, but if he didn't, Bella's life would be ruined by this night, one way or another. He stroked her hair, voice breaking. Close your eyes, sweetie. She sniffled, tears on her cheeks. I want mommy, she whimpered. Chris's soul felt as though was being ripped in half. Mommy is sleeping, he lied gently. We're going to go see her soon, but first you have to go night-night, okay? His hands shook as she reached for her pillow. Bella saw movement. Even at 4, perhaps, she sensed the danger. She tried to sit up, confusion turning into fear. Daddy? I love you, Bella, he whispered, voice raw. I'm so sorry. Then he pressed the pillow over her face. Bella struggled immediately, panicked, a muffled cry coming from beneath as her little arms fought against him. She was weak, but the adrenaline made her wriggle fiercely. It was a nightmarish replay of Shanann, but 1,000 times worse because this was his baby, his firstborn, innocent and trusting. Chris sobbed as he held the pillow down. Shh, he gasped between sobs as if trying to soothe her. It'll be okay. Bella's legs kicked, her nails scratched at his arms, a mirror of her mother's final fight. She was whimpering Daddy under the pillow, the word coming out garbled. It shattered what was left of Chris's heart, but he didn't let go. He couldn't. Finally, after endless agonizing seconds, her tiny body went limp. He pulled the pillow away and nearly collapsed by what he had done. Bella's beautiful face, pale, eyes closed as if asleep, but he knew she'd never wake up. He kissed her forehead over and over, trembling. Forgive me, he croaked. Please forgive me. Cece stirred in her bed, perhaps awakened by the commotion. Daddy, she called softly, voice thick with sleep. Chris turned hollow-eyed. He must have looked like a monster emerging from the darkness because Cece's eyes went wide with fright at the sight of him. She started to cry out, confused. He moved mechanically, repeating the same heinous act on his younger daughter. She was barely awake enough to even register what was happening, which he told himself was a mercy. 2 minutes later, Celeste joined her sister and mother in eternal sleep. The deed was complete. The house was silent, but from the ragged breathing, in a daze, Chris went about the next steps on autopilot. He retrieved the black trash bag and carefully wrapped Shanann's body to contain fluids. He also found a small blanket for each of the girls and wrapped them gently, their faces covered, last as he couldn't bear to see them. With surprising strength born of adrenaline, he hauled the 3 bodies down and out to the truck. Dawn was approaching, and he needed to be on the road soon to the work site. Before he closed the tailgate over the tragic cargo, he took Shanann's left hand and slid off her wedding ring. It glinted in the dully lit truck light. He pocketed it to leave behind later as planned. His gloves were sticky. He peeled them off and stuffed them into the trash bag along with the pillowcases and any other incriminating fabric. Those he disposed of separately. As he prepared to get into the driver's seat, his phone buzzed in his pocket, startling him. With shaking hands, he pulled it out. A text from Nichol. It read, "Are you okay? I'm freaking out. Please answer. I love you." He stared at the glowing screen through blurry eyes. Everything had gone exactly as planned. It was the most horrific thing he'd ever lived through. A surge of anguish and anger welled up. Part of him wanted to scream at her, to blame her for pushing him to do this, but another part of him desperately needed her comfort right now, to tell him he wasn't an irredeemable monster, that this nightmare had served a purpose. His blood-stained fingers hovered over the keypad. He finally typed, "It's done. I'll text you when I'm free. I love you." He hit send. Within seconds, 3 dots showed up as she typed back, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I love you so much." He didn't respond. He slid the phone away and steeled himself for what came next: the disposal, the lies, the lifetime of guilt ahead. He had drove into the pre-dawn darkness. Chris Watts felt like a dead man breathing. He had done the unthinkable, and there was no going back. In the weeks that followed, he would play the role. He'd rehearsed, feigning ignorance, giving interviews, pleading for his family to return home. Nichol would play her part too, acting shocked, then quietly disposing of any evidence of their affair on her phone. They had their plan, and they stuck to it coldly, methodically. But no plan is perfect. In time, inconsistencies and suspicion would crack their facade. And though this scenario supposes a joint plot and a willing accomplice in Nichol Kessinger, reality ultimately showed Chris alone facing justice. Perhaps in some alternate path like this one, Nichol had truly conspired and planned with Chris to make this happen. In this darkest scenario, that 111-minute phone call was indeed what many fear: a conspiracy of two, a meticulous and heartless planning of murder, and it imagines Nichol as a co mastermind, urging Chris on, sharing in the guilt. It's a version that satisfies the darkest suspicions of anyone following this case, placing an equal share of blame on the mistress. It underscores the terrifying notion that two people in love can egg each other into committing acts far more evil than either might attempt alone. What do you guys think? Hey, Vanessa, you'll have to go back and listen to the other versions of this story. You know, I don't want to believe that the children died at the house. I like to think that Chris was planning what to do next on the way there. And I like to think that he didn't know he was going to murder them until he did it. And, this scenario is what I hear a lot of people say. They think that Chris somehow drugged his wife. That's why she didn't fight back. Some think that the children were actually murdered at the house as well. Um, yeah, the other, like this one is very dark, and it's incredibly hard to think about. It's really hard to imagine um, somebody being capable of having a conversation like this and then actually following through and murdering his entire family. Um, one version of this scenario that I don't have written for this live stream was a version where Chris um, actually like finds Nichol Kessinger in his house murdering his kids, and that's how it all started. That was something I wrote a long time ago. I don't really believe that she was there. I think she, if anything, she may have like gotten up in the middle of the night and drove over there to see if anything was happening, but not not murder, obviously. But I mean, there is that possibility that if her phone pinged there, that she may have seen something happening, but didn't believe what she saw and didn't tell the police. And then, when she first heard Chris on the news, it all became clear. There's just so much uncertainty. There's so much unknowns. And then there's the whole part of, can you trust what anybody says? How much of the truth is actually coming out in Chris's several different confessions? We don't really know what had happened. And I don't even know if Chris remembers exactly what had happened. I'm sure it's played out in his mind so many times that the story has evolved into whatever he imagines it now. Um, and I like to think that Nichol Kessinger that she really wasn't that evil. I would rather believe that than that she said, Chris, you need to do this. It's the only way. But, a lot of people think that she did. And so it's hard not to consider it. Hello, Angel Blue from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Yeah. So, um, if you guys want to, I think tomorrow I can do another live stream and go over the parts that I didn't get to today because I didn't realize how long this would take. Um, but the next version of this scenario kind of goes with the idea that Chris says he's going to do something, but Nichol Kessinger doesn't believe it's true. She thinks it's just like something somebody says when they're angry. And then the mysterious other scenario that I don't want to kind of tell you what it is yet until you actually hear it. Hey, Jennifer. Hey, Vanessa. I know some of you guys joined late. Ron says that she had a criminal history before Chris Warts. Chris Watts, but I don't think that. I think that was what was it, like a underage crime or something? And I've seen the mugshot. I've read the description of what had happened, but I can't remember exactly what it is. But teenagers can be kind of different than they are as an adult. I mean, I guess you could become worse. ICE says two of the biggest motivators for this kind of crime is the extramarital affair and financial gain. And this case ticks both boxes. See, whenever I think of this, I don't think of the insurance money because it's just, I never considered that. And even after like the two families kind of fought over the money for the lives of their daughter and daughter-in-law and grandchildren, I still didn't think about it. Like I just like, I would think that's the least that anybody thinks about. Like it's just awful. Yeah, Ron, if I do remember the knife. I don't remember that she actually stabbed someone, but I knew it was some sort of violent crime. I need to look at that thing again. It's weird how sometimes I like know stuff and I know it for a long time, but it feels like get all this knowledge is like throwing a wet noodle and it sticks to the wall for a long time, but eventually it starts sliding down and you forget. And Yeah. But Vanessa says, yeah, she stabbed a family friend in the back. Yeah, that's actually scary. I didn't realize that it was a really that kind of a stabbing. I've been stabbed with a fork and a kitchen knife, and it's not fun. So, what other scenarios do you guys think may have possibly happened? Cuffew, are you still here? I know you've got some good opinions. Yeah, I would. It's not a funny story or anything. The fork, Vanessa says, a fork and a kitchen knife. You should stay away from the kitchens. Or yeah. Um, I don't really feel like explaining what had happened, but it wasn't a nice accident or anything like that. But I don't know if you could see it in the. You can almost see the scar, but half of my thumb is numb. Blocking for the knife. Victoria says she gave him an ultimatum for sure. She was getting impatient. She said it was hard to wait in one of the interviews. Yeah, I bet it was harder for him with his smaller daughter because he doesn't talk about it. I know that when I talk about those things, it's really hard. Um, and I don't know, like it's just a terrible thing for a child to have to go through. Like I can totally imagine how trusting they are. You know, it's horrible. It's really horrible. And there are other family annihilator cases out there with other children. Um, some of them you guys haven't heard of because they don't make national news. Their stories are more horrible than this one, and yet nobody knows about them because they were poor families with drug addiction problems and things like that. Um, One of the reasons why Chris Watts is so popular is because everyone looked so ordinary. They had a big, nice house. They had good jobs. Everybody was, attractive. The mistress, the wife, the husband, all of those things. Um, Everything looked like how everybody would expect their dream life to be. And that's why you hear the Chris Watts story start out like something with um, you know, the picture perfect life destroyed or something like that. Gerald 2 cents says, sounds like we're all here to cope with our own past traumas. Well, I think that is something that happens to all of us and that, we're always dealing with. And that's how we kind of relate to other traumas that aren't our own is by comparing them to something we have experienced. Um, there's a lot of things that I've experienced that someone else has never experienced. You know, does it mean that they won't be sympathetic? I don't think so. Um, there's just there's just a lot of heavy things in everybody's life. Everybody has stuff, the baggage. Everybody has trauma. We're all trying to get from point A to point B in the best way possible. You know, there's only one wrong way, and that is to hurt other people as you move through your life. And if you can avoid hurting other people, I think, you know, you'll be happier in the end by the time you get to point B. Red Sonja says the mistress was handsome at best. You know, I think she was fairly attractive. I mean, I don't know that she is like, you know, somebody I would like daydream about or anything, but she wasn't ugly. She was, she seemed fun. She seemed nice. She seemed regular, but slim and, and all of that stuff. She had, just a regular, I don't know. I feel uncomfortable talking about it like that. But yeah, she was, from a guy's point of view, she wasn't hideous or something. She was, a valid, like, pursuit, I guess you could say, for Chris. I don't think he was like that attractive either, but somehow his wife was fairly attractive. He got her, and he had a girlfriend. Yeah, the sexy empanada. It's never gonna get old for me. Do you think Victoria says Nicole is very masculine, but is she really? She seems fairly feminine, if you ask me, based off the way she speaks in like some of her videos. She tries to sound like a little girl. She tries to sound cute. That's a very feminine thing to do. Guys don't usually talk like that. Um, they're more masculine. But, she probably was um, more, I don't know, maybe feminine isn't, or more masculine isn't maybe the right word, but the gender norms might have been a little bit different for her, where she wanted to be in charge, but she still had her femininity, in my opinion. I agree, Maribel. I don't think grown women talk like little girls either. Um, but there are relationships out there where like the the husband and wife have kind of like the reversed roles. It's not so uncommon. Um, you know, women can have more masculine like tendencies, like as if you consider into the gender norms kind of side of it, the gender roles. I mean, um, there's women out there who have stay-at-home husbands. There's, the the breadwinner winners are women, and the men, have side jobs, to kind of fit with the works schedule of the wife. They plan everything around the wife instead of the man. I mean, there's a like when I grew up, my dad was like the worst. He he always had, you know, sexist jokes to say. He always talked about wearing the pants in the family and blah blah blah, all of the stuff that kind of died out in the early 2000s. And it's just the gender roles are evolving as we, you know, become more advanced in our society, I think. Maribel says Chris Watts and Nicole Kessinger lied. Yep, I believe they did. Vanessa says that Nicole wasn't as pretty as the wife. I agree with that statement. I don't think he was getting, an upgrade or anything. But what about, what did Nicole Kessinger think she was getting out of this? What is it about married men that attract these women. They all know the horror stories that come from these things. Nothing ever ends well when this stuff happens, yet it still happens. I don't understand it. Jennifer St. Vincent says, I would like to know why NK did not tell the truth in her police interviews and also why she had to send her father into the interview with her. Yeah, I don't know what had happened in those interviews, but she should have had an attorney, I think, but maybe she thought that that would make her look guilty, that, if she had to get an attorney, maybe she needed an attorney for something. But having her father, you know, was better somehow to make her look less guilty. I mean, obviously, it seems to have worked. She didn't get investigated fully. Ron says, maybe they like married men because it's easier to just walk away. And yeah, I can see that happening too. I know I've read some stuff that married men are more attractive, or guys in a relationship are more attractive to women sometimes because somebody else is attracted to them, and they have someone. And I don't see the logic in that myself, but I mean I can understand the concept, the idea that somebody looks stable in a relationship. That's the kind of guy you want, right? And if they already seem stable in their life, then why not try to, you know, pry them away from their family? Olga says, yeah, she's a different kind of masculine. I think she's feminine with some like tendencies that are masculine, I think. She still has that feminine side to her, you know. She she's just trying to be too cute all the time with the colors she wears, the way she talks. Hey, Gerald, thanks for watching. Now we're about to finish up tonight, but if everything goes well tomorrow about the same time in the afternoon, I will continue this one. We can talk about it some more. But I do have to get off of here and get some food and get ready to call my kids. Um, so guys, it's been fun. I hope you guys enjoyed my reading. I'm not that great at this stuff, but my writing sometimes is good, sometimes it's not good. But I hope you enjoyed my ideas, and it might give you something to think about when you consider your own ideas on what really happened. But as always, guys, stay kind, be vigilant, and always question the truth. I'll catch you in the next video.